Hey everyone, I hope you can all hear and see me. Thank you all for being patient. I'm super excited to hang out with everyone here today. I hope you can hear me now. I'll give it a couple seconds to see and make sure that you all can hear me. Um, and as some of you may know, every now and then I'll look to the left if you've joined us in a couple streams before. It's because that's where I see your chat. So I hope you can see me at this point and hear me. Shout out throughout the whole time. Feel free to message me in the live chat. We'll be answering questions as well. And if there's any questions that you have, we'll try to answer them. And also, it'll let me know if there's something I need to do to get the stream to work better. So just let me know, and I'll be happy to do so. And my name is Jonathan. Normally, you meet our lovely Amir, but today I'm gonna take the turn to stream and hang out with you all. Give Amir a break from all the amazing stuff he always shows us. And with that, we can get started. Let me go ahead and switch to my screen here. And wow, there's so many of you joining us with us today, so excited about that. I'm going to go ahead and get started here, and hopefully we'll see our computer screen. Awesome. I hope you can see my desktop at this point. If you don't, feel free again to comment in the live chat. And we want this to be friendly and fun. I want it to keep interactive. So again, let me know what you want me to do. But today, what I was thinking we can do is talk a little bit about our new ability to create LiDAR powered lenses. So if you actually go to lensstudio.com, you can see this amazing big banner here at the top, create LiDAR powered lenses for the new iPhone 12 Pro. And right next to it is the Learn More button. And so let's start by going to this page and learning a little bit more. And so what I really love about LiDAR and what we can do now is that we can understand the world a lot better and knowing where things are. And so what you see in this image here is our ability to populate the world with content. So in this case, you can see that there's birds flying around, and on tables there are flowers, and on the floor there are grass. And so that's what we're going to try to tackle today. We have an amazing template we'll go through, and hopefully we'll get a chance to see how you can make your own version. So let's get started. What we'll do is at the bottom of this page, it says download the template to create LiDAR powered lenses here. So we'll go ahead and download that. And you're actually able to do it without the template. We recommend you use the template because it will set up the scene so it's a bit easier for you to get started. And you'll also notice you can jump to this page by going to our regular templates section, right? And on the left, under the world section, because we're going to be dealing with the world today, there's a downloadable template here. So go ahead and click that downloadable and you'll land on this page. And the first thing we're going to do is download the template. So I'm just looking to the comments right now while we download this. Actually, it looks done already, so really amazing internet today. But I'm looking at the comment here, and some of the comment is like, how do we test it with the phone? And does it work with the iPad Pro? These are amazing questions. So actually, Amir is joining us here as well in the chat, and he's correct. You can use it on the iPad Pro, but as JMax pointed out here, we'll actually show how you can test this without any device. We've added an interactive preview within Lens Studio, so you can try out the entire experience within Lens Studio itself. So that's going to be really amazing. Let's take a look, okay? So I'll go ahead and jump here into Lens Studio 3.2, and let's open our downloads folder. So we just download this World Mesh template from the website, and all I'm going to do here is drag and drop it to our Lens Studio to get started. So I hope you're all doing really well today. I'm excited to be showing you this because there's so many things we can do. And I know in that image earlier, we showed, populating things in the world, like let's say boats or on the floor or clouds in the sky. But there's a lot more that we can do here. And I'll show that in a second. But what I'll do is I'll scroll to this part of the guide, and I want to talk about these two specific points. What the LiDAR capability allows lenses to do is two major things. There are a lot of different things it enables, but I wanted to point out these two major things. One is a world mesh, and what that allows you to do is create a 3D reconstruction of the world in real time based on that LiDAR data, and we'll see how Lens Studio makes that super easy. And then secondly, you're able to raycast or choose a point on the screen and see what type of surfaces that that point is. And that's how we're able to create these amazing worlds, because we can choose at this point, oh, that looks to be a table. We'll add maybe a 3D object on that table. And then as we walk away from that table, because we know the mesh of the world, we can occlude that flower or that thing on the table with the real world. So let's take a look at what that might look like. So here we've opened up Lens Studio. I hope you're all familiar with this. And if you're not, I'm so happy that you're joining us, and you'll get familiar really soon. And what I want to focus on first is answer that question: how do we test this experience when you don't have the device? So in the top left of the preview panel, and this preview panel allows you to test out your lens, your AR experience in real time on your computer in Lens Studio. If you look at this new preview panel, you'll also notice that there are new buttons here. So normally we have the preview mode, there's the webcam mode, and then there is the interactive preview mode. So this is what's new in Lens Studio 3.2. Let me see if I can try and zoom in here. Give me 1 second here. Let's see here. So here you can see there's the third button here. It's the interactive preview mode. I'm going to go ahead and click that button. And you'll notice that now, that now I'm in a living room. And I can use my right click on my mouse to move around the scene. And if you've played video games before, you might be familiar with this. You can use your keyboard to move around. So one way is to use the WASD keys on your keyboard. So here I'm pressing the A button, so I'm moving backward. And here I'm pressing the W key to move forward. So again, using the right click button, I can move around the screen, and I can move my camera using the keyboard button WASD. And if you'd like, you can also use the arrow keys on your keyboard. So you can press left, right, down, and you'd move around the scene. So that's super cool. So this imagines what it would look like if you had the device. And you'll also notice here at the bottom there is where your position is, or you can go ahead and press the reset button. So now we're back to where we were before. Awesome. So let's try to zoom back out here to see the entire screen. Give me 1 second. Okay. So that's a little bit about interactive preview. Artem has a really great point. Artem, by the way, is a super amazing Lens Studio developer here, so we're all in for a treat for him to join us. So we're going to go ahead and press Shift here and move faster by pressing the Shift button. So that's super cool. Okay, now we're in our world. And before we get too deep into how this world creation is made, let's take a little bit of a look into that world mesh building that we mentioned earlier. So let's look at the top left here of our scene panel, or of our objects panel. And this panel shows a list of the objects that we have in our lens. And the specific one we want to look at first is this world mesh controller. This world mesh controller is super cool. It represents, underneath this object are two objects, the world mesh occluder and the world mesh. And this is what I was saying earlier, that LiDAR allows us to construct the world, right? So if we took a look at the scene again, let's see here. If we look at, okay, this is a good one right here. So notice how there's boats here, right? And I'm gonna walk backward and notice how when I'm behind this wall, that boat is gone. And that allows the lens to be more immersive because it's taking into account the real world. And now if I move backward, you can see that even this desert is occluded by this chair and table. So that's really cool. It's allowing you to bring in the user's world into the AR, and makes it that much more immersive and that much more realistic. And what we'll do now is actually show that reconstruction. On the left here, I'm going to try to zoom in here so that's a bit easier to see. You have these two objects, world mesh occluder. So that's what we're seeing before, right? Occluding means you have an object, and now because you're occluding it, you won't be able to see that object. So we're using the world mesh to occlude the world. But you'll also notice that there's this other world mesh, and next to it is this orange color, whereas the one before is this blue color. If you're familiar with Lens Studio, you'll know that these colors represent the render layer that this object is on. So this world mesh occluder is on the blue layer, similar to the camera's blue layer. And so because I want to show you what that world mesh looks like, let's just change this world mesh from the orange layer to the default layer so it can be seen by the camera. So blue and blue, right? And so now you can see the world based on the world mesh. And what I'm going to do is, let's change the color of this world mesh so we can see it a bit better. I'm going to right click the material and click select. And I just realized I need to zoom out because you can't see the preview panel. Actually, before we do that, let's try something really cool too. I'm going to go ahead and press this button on the top right. I don't know if you played around with this button that's new in 3.0. What it allows you to do is put the preview panel in your scene panel. So that's pretty cool. So what we're going to do now is we're now selecting the mesh that the world occluder is on, and we'll choose a different color. We'll choose red here. Okay, now you can see that the entire world is red. I'm going to zoom out here so we can see the whole screen. Okay, and what I want to do is I'm going to change the camera. So let's put this back actually now that we're full screen again. Sorry about that. So now we're back to our preview panel as it was before. And to refresh the mesh building scene, I'm going to switch to the regular preview and then come back to the interactive preview. And now if I look around, you can see as I walk around, this red mesh is building out. So again, this red mesh represents our world mesh, right? And as I'm moving around, the world is being reconstructed in real time. And so that's what's really cool about LiDAR. This is not just because we have 3D modeled this interactive preview or the scene. If you had a LiDAR device, like for example, this iPhone, you would be able to make this completely new world procedurally, generatively, as you move the phone around. So that's really, really cool. So you can see, again, it's rebuilding the mesh as it were. So that's just a little bit about world mesh, and you can see that it's just a mesh here. It's called world mesh. And so if you don't want to use a template, you can go ahead and go into resources panel and type in world mesh. And then you'll be able to add it just as you would with any other mesh. You don't have to worry about how do I get LiDAR into my experience, or how do I get this, this procedural thing. You just add the world mesh And so what we're going to do now, actually one last thing about the world mesh, and to make the occluder really clear, what I can do is actually turn off these world mesh. So here I turn off that red world mesh, and I'll also turn off the occluder here by clicking the checkbox. And you'll notice if I turn off the world mesh occluder, it's just adding the 3D world as it would with any other lens. And so again, this world mesh occluder just allows you to hide things behind walls, behind tables, behind chairs. And you can actually use it, as you saw before, with any material. So I've added the PBR red material here, but you can maybe even use the material library and change how that world mesh is displayed. So that's pretty cool. So I'm going to pause there. I'm going to take a little look at the live chat in case there are any questions. So if you be so kind as to be patient as I scroll up and down, and feel free to message me if you have any questions. Awesome. Thank you so much, Amir and Artem, for answering some of the questions. Those are all absolutely correct comments. Thank you, everyone, for asking these questions. Indeed, this feature relies, as the name suggests, on the LiDAR. So you will need to have a LiDAR-enabled device in order to try this lens in the way you see in the interactive preview. But actually, I can go ahead and press this top left, go back to the regular video preview. And in this preview, you'll notice that you still see the lens. It's a little bit different. The content is not all over the world, but it's still on the ground, on the like above the ground. And what this preview is showing is how your lens would look like if a user does not have a LiDAR-enabled device. So what's amazing is, again, the lens has a fallback, the template has a fallback, and your lens still works for everyone. But if the user has a device that has LiDAR, it will take it up a notch and place it all over the world. So that's really cool. You don't have to worry too much that you're leaving some people out of the experience. You still can define how the experience is like when you don't have LiDAR. And there's a little bit more information on the guide on how that works. And if we have time, we'll try to get that at the end. And then the other question is, like, how do you test this on the device if you do have the device? And what's really cool, as with any other Lens Studio or Lens project, there's a button here at the top, Preview and Snapchat. All you have to do is click that button, scan that snap code if you have the Snapchat installed on your phone. You just press and hold that snap code, and it'll ask you, hey, do you want to pair this with Lens Studio? You click pair, and now I just did that, and so it says device paired, and all I have to do is press send lens to device. And now on my phone, I can test out the experience. And that's what's really amazing about Lens Studio. It's truly built for AR, so I can build, I can test it on the computer to build really quickly, and then once I'm ready, without having to like plug in a cable or worry about like, will this work or not, I just push the device and it will send it, so I can test it as if I was receiving the lens in real life. Okay, cool. So let's look at the next thing. How do we get this amazing world that we've built in this interactive preview? So there's two pieces that we'll start thinking about. And first, we'll look at the objects panel, and we'll notice that there is a spawn object, right? So all these words that start with spawn. These objects are literally what the name suggests. It spawns things, right? So this spawns the desert, it spawns the forest, and so forth. And what you'll notice is that each of these have some settings in them. So we'll go in a second, but maybe to make it a bit easier, what I'll do is I'll select all these objects, and I'll turn them off to prove there's nothing up my sleeve. And I'll refresh this lens, and you'll notice that the desert is being spawned right here, right, on every chair. So let's look at that. Desert on chair, on seat. So I'll go here to another room here, and there's some seat here, and hopefully we'll see some desert. So we can see that this object, right, which has the script spawner setup. So it's just a script that you can find the resources panel here. We'll, spawner setup, and it describes how this desert will appear. And so now if I change, like, I don't want to see, let's put it on the floor. Now you can see my desert's all over the floor. And so all you have to do is bring in your objects to Lens Studio, and we'll see that in a second, and then choose what surface you want. Hey, I want it to happen on, let's see, on doors. Let's see how that would look. And we're learning this together, so I'm actually not sure whether there's any doors in this room. But maybe a better one would be let's see here, a wall, because there are walls all over here. So let's try here. Oh, it's choosing horizontal surfaces. And so there's other options here. I can choose any here. And now you can see our desert's all over the wall. How cool is that? So you can see there's a lot of different options in spawner setup. So you can try different things. And I can, maybe I want it to be a bit closer. I can change that. I can change the settings to 10. And now you can see the desert's all over the wall. So that's really fun. And again, you'll notice that the wall is being occluded by the real world, like these shelves over here. Okay, so that's pretty fun. I'll put it back to how it was, so it's not too crazy here. I'll put it on seat and on all horizontal surfaces. So now we're back to how it was before. We have this desert spawning on seat. Now, really astute reader or viewer might have noticed, like, hey, how come you still see the objects in the scene panel here in the middle? And how come I still see, the other objects like cloud, forest, boats? So these are great questions. And what the reason for that is, you'll notice the spawner setup itself does not contain the objects. There's no mesh visual here. And in fact, it's a reference to another object. So you have this list of objects here. And so you can right click on these objects like you would in any of Lens Studio fields. You can click select. So what I did there is I jump into what it's referencing. So you can see I have this objects presets object, and there's a list of desert here, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And you can see there are clouds, boat, and forest, planets and stars. And so if I go ahead and disable these objects, you'll notice that they're gone now. And I can go ahead and refresh the lens, and I can still walk onto the seat, and we should still see the desert here because the desert object's enabled. And if we zoom out the scene here, you'll notice there's our desert. So that's really cool. So I'll take a pause a second. I hope you're enjoying the stream so far. Let me know in the comments if there's any questions you have, and also if something you want me to repeat what I've done, or like you have a question of like, hey, what did you do just now? I want to make sure that you're feeling really comfortable about where we are. Awesome. So it looks like Amir and Artem were able to answer most of the questions, so I will go to the next part. But there was this question like, what do you do if you want to bring in your own object, right? And how would you deal with that? And can you quickly create the object or materials and assets to bring into Lens Studio? So we're gonna go get there, but before we get there, let's start with the objects that is within Lens Studio. So let's try that together, and then we'll, if we have time, we'll bring in our own object in. And so what we'll do now is let's turn off the desert as well. I really want to show you how you can make this on your own. And so what I'll do here is I'll disable all these objects. So if we look at our scene, there's nothing in it, right? And if we look at our world, there's nothing in it as well. So let's see what happens if we want to add our own object. And what I'll start here first is I'll add the box. Nothing special about the box. I just think like, it's a pretty simple object. So we can really see how it works. So we have this object here. And if I move back, you can notice there's our object. And what we want to do is let's try to populate the world with this box. And so the fastest way to do it, as I mentioned before, is like, let's duplicate one of these spawners, right? So I can duplicate one of these spawner setup, or the spawn object. I'll right click and press duplicate. And then I'll rename this so we know. Spawn box, and I'll enable this object here. And what I'll do is, instead of the stars, I'm gonna drag the box in there. So now the spawner setup knows that we're trying to spawn the box object we created earlier. And we'll put this on the floor. It's any, and then it'll spawn anywhere. So the next part is like, well, okay, we've attached the spawner setup, but our box is still here, only in the front center. Why is that? So here's a little magic sauce that we've actually added to this lens. And what's really cool is, while it works in this LiDAR template, we want to share it as part of this LiDAR template. It actually works outside of the LiDAR template, but we have this magical sauce that allows you to instance this box everywhere. One way you may think about spawning is like, well, I can duplicate these objects a couple of times and then position them to where you want it to be. But if you think about it, that's not the most efficient way we can do this, because if we just duplicate our objects, right, if we just right-click, duplicate the box a couple of times, this is not extremely efficient, because then we'll have a reference to all these objects, and then we'll tell the CPU like, hey, I want more boxes. So it's not the best way to do it, because we want to populate the world with these boxes. And so instead of doing on the CPU layer or on the, what we can do is the same way particles work, right? So if you have a particles, you can have one instance of a star, and then the stars will be everywhere. And the stars will be everywhere. You can have hundreds, 500 more stars, and it doesn't make the lens a lot heavier. Whereas if you duplicate the boxes like maybe 500 times, it'll get really heavy. And so to do this, to add this magic sauce, you'll notice in the resources panel, there's this instance object material example, and it says duplicate me. So let's go ahead and duplicate that. We'll go ahead and right click duplicate. And this is graph material that we provided as part of the template, but we'll take a look in a second. There's nothing special about this material other than what's inside the graph. So we'll just call this instance box, right? And I'll go ahead and delete that. And if you want to learn how this works, you can, with any graph material, you can double click it and you can see like our graph, and we try to annotate it. So hopefully it's a bit easier for you to take a look at and understand how it all works. Go back to the scene panel. Now we can just apply this box material, this instance box material, into our box. So I'll go ahead and drop that in, and I'll go ahead and refresh the lens, and wow, now you can see that the box is everywhere. So that's really cool. So again, all I needed to do, we'll go through this repeat step again. Maybe this time we'll go over the spear. What we need is the special material. And this material allows you to instance one object many times, so that it's a bit more efficient and more devices can run it. So I can go ahead and right click, click duplicate here. And this time, let's add a sphere. So I'll call this instance sphere. Right? And this time, let's add a sphere. So now we have a sphere. And lastly, all we need to do is connect the two pieces together by creating a spawner. So I'll duplicate this spawn boxes, and I'll call it spawn spheres, and then I'll have it reference the sphere. And then finally, I'll set the sphere to use that instant sphere material. So I go ahead and try and refresh it here, and hopefully it works. Okay, and now you can see that there are boxes and spheres all over our floor. Let's change, to make it a bit clearer, we'll change the spheres to be on, let's say, all the walls. Okay, now we have spheres on the wall, boxes on the floor. So that's really fun and really easy. So just to make sure the steps are clear, let's go over the three pieces, right? So first, we need the actual object that we want all over the world. So in this case, I made a box and a sphere. Secondly, we need the spawner setup, which describes how those boxes and spheres should be spawned in the world. So in this case, we have a sphere on this spawner setup, and then for the spawn boxes, we have a box reference here, and all you have to do is drag those in. And then right below that, it describes what type of surface, placement, and where you want this box and sphere to be played out. And then lastly, each of these objects has special materials on them that you can create by duplicating this instance object material, duplicate me. So I duplicated those. And so these are like any other material, so I can go ahead and double click that. And I don't want it to be white. So let's replace the sphere with, let's say, pink or magenta in this case. Click OK. And then I'll go ahead and refresh my lens here. And now my spheres are pink. And maybe I can even add like, maybe you want to do PBR. We can go ahead and make it these balls a little shiny. So you can see some of that happening here. I don't have textures on these, so that's why they're looking like checkerboards. But maybe what I'll do here is I'll add some opacity here. So I'll make it a bit lighter. And then let's play around with some settings here. I can make it really close to each other. So now I have a bunch of spheres with lower opacity happening around all my walls. And the boxes are still on the floor. So that's really cool. So what we've done so far is create the object, create the spawner script, and create the special material that will allow us to instance the object everywhere. So I'll pause a second here, read the comments, and at this time, feel free to type in any question that you have, and we'll try to tackle them. So thank you again. It looks like a lot of it has been answered by Artem and Amir, so I really appreciate that. And yeah, we'll try to see if we can get the toy box template here, and we get to at the end. Target that use the camera location as a position, shoot an arrow or bullet at it. So Frank has this pretty good question, which is like, how can we interact with any of these instances? So that's actually a pretty interesting question, right? So I want to go back a little bit to talking about this special instance material. In order to make this lens optimized, and notice how there's just so many spheres happening here, which means that if we were to create spheres, all these spheres all at once, or in their individual objects, like create a bunch of spheres, like duplicate the objects over and over again, this lens would get really heavy because there's probably 1,000 of these spheres right now at this point. And so what we did was we instanced or created these spheres on the shader or the graphics layer. But there's a trade-off here. Because we have the spheres everywhere and we're doing it on the shader level, we don't have necessarily a reference to each sphere the same way we have this reference to each of these box and sphere. So in reality, actually, all of these spheres have one origin point. So we can try this. I'm not sure if it will work. We'll find out together. Let's see here. If I move the sphere, sorry, give me 1 second here. Let's say if I move this sphere, you'll notice if I move this one sphere object and I change its position to like this y position to 30, all the spheres go up because they all have the same reference point. And so one thing to watch out for when you're using this technique, when you're using this shader, whether in this template or in your own project, that they will all have the same transform location because their position is set in the shader world, and so the lens doesn't know exactly where each sphere is. That being said, if you dive deep into the code, you'll be able to see that we actually store a lot of these positions, and you can learn more about this in the template. So if you scroll in our guide here, there's a lot of information, including how the shader setup works. So go ahead and take a look at that. And if you have questions and you're like, hey, I want to really do this, can you let me know how I can go about doing that? Go ahead and go to Learn and go to the Forums section. As some of you all know, I always talk about this in every stream because I just think it's such a valuable piece of information. Go ahead and jump to our forum and ask a question, and then either one of us or the community. Actually, I see a few of you here on this live stream answering questions all the time, so I really appreciate all of you. Thank you all for that. Go ahead and ask a question there, and we'll try to help you out. But this is a really great resource because you'll find even more content beyond this template. Like for example, Jonah here made an ML content. So if you haven't tried out the ML stuff for Lens Studio, try out the last couple of streams or last couple of videos. We talk a little bit more about ML, but here he provided a model for a body, and then people are writing tutorials that you can use. So there's a lot of these, and even us, we also write additional content here, like for example, how do you make a game in Lens Studio. So take a look at the forum. There's a lot of different content, but specifically for the stream, if you have further question on how some of these things work, take a look at the doc or ask in the forum, and we'd be happy to try and help you out there. And I'll scroll down here. So there's a question here as whether the lens will still be 4 megabyte. The lens will still be 4 megabyte, and part of that, we want to make the experience as good as possible. So we want it to be easy because you're mobile, right? When you're trying to use these lenses, and so we want to make sure that people have a good experience downloading the lens, and so it will still require 4 megabyte. But you'll notice already here, right? Like we have so much content within this lens. I'll just enable all of these. And you'll notice that even though we have all this content, just like plethora of content, we're still under the 4 megabyte. So this, again, talks a little bit about like, as we're building a lens, let's think about how we can make it more efficient and the smart way for us to do it. And so, yes, we'll still be under 4 megabyte. However, I think it hasn't been too much of a problem for us. You can see all these content here. And I'll also mention, because if we just talked about ML, if you do use ML, the ML model is completely separate from the 4 megabytes. So in other lenses, if you're using ML model, there are some cases because we know that you'll need more space that we provide that space. So, but in this case, we feel that you'll be able to make really cool, amazing stuff without it. So yeah, I hope that makes a lot of sense. So thank you, Jagmeet, for already trying out this this template. I really love that. Yeah, we find it amazing too. There's a question as to whether we have class simulation Currently, there isn't a cloud simulation in Lens Studio, but there are a few templates that I recommend you check out. There is the chain template, chain physics template, which simulates physics on a chain, so that might be sort of related. And then on the Lens Studio website, there's also a guide on how you can import, like for example, a flag into Lens Studio, and that has, you can simulate cloth that way, but importing to Lens Studio. So it won't be live, it will be pre-rendered, but you can get similar type of feeling there. So there's another question. Wait, how do you move in the preview? I don't know how this works. So we covered this a little bit in the beginning, and you can find more information on the web. But the nice thing is it's pretty intuitive. Hold on the right-click mouse button. You can look around, and then you can use WASD like a video game, exactly, to move around the scene, to move around the camera. You can use the arrow keys as well to do this. So we have a couple minutes left. Well, let's try something fun together. I don't know how well this will work, but let's try it together. What I want to do now is I will add, because someone asked this earlier, so we'll try it together. What happens if you bring in your own object? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off all these things that we've made so far. Okay, our lens is pretty clean. All these objects are turned off. And let's find out together what will happen. I will do this live with you all, and I will bring an item. Stop. I will bring this red panda. You might all be familiar with this into Lens Studio. So to bring in 3D content to Lens Studio, all you have to do is drag it into the scene panel or the objects panel. It'll ask you, hey, do you want to import this? I'm going to go ahead and press import here. Use the default setting. Give it a couple seconds to read the content. And now we have our red panda here. So let's see here. So pretty cool. We have our red panda hanging out. So I also want to show, like, even what we can do now is, like, let's try to put red panda everywhere on the table. Let's see how we can do that. So one more time, we've added the object. So we'll go ahead and put this object here. And this object has two red panda low and inner tube. And so what we want to do is make two instance material for each object, right? So I'll go ahead and copy those. Let's see here, duplicate. So give Lens Studio a couple seconds. So we get instance spear here. I'll call it instance panda. And then I'll duplicate one more time. I'll call it instance tube. Again, we'll connect it, so we'll do instance panda here, and then instance tube here. And so, similar to any other materials that you'd set up in Lens Studio, let's set this up. So we'll go ahead and use, we'll give it full opacity here, and then there's the panda base texture, so I'll go ahead and enable that base texture here, and I'll go ahead and choose red panda base. And then we can even use the normal texture. So let's see here. Do we have our normal textures? Let's take a look at how that panda is set up here. Okay, that's actually all we need. We just need the red panda base. And then for the inner tube, we'll do the same. We'll select the tube material, and we'll go ahead and use the base texture. We'll use red panda base, set it back to white, and now we have our panda. Cool. And now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and duplicate this. So we'll create a spawner sphere. So we'll duplicate spawn sphere. To give it a couple seconds. I'll click duplicate, and I'll call this, oops, what did I do there? I created an object by accident, sorry about that. I'll call this spawn panda, and then I'll go ahead and choose our panda. Red panda hello. And then we'll set it up, and now we'll try to refresh the lens, and hopefully we get panda everywhere. We haven't turned on the object. Sorry about that. Wow, there's just pandas everywhere. Oh my god. Okay, let's try to make the scale a bit smaller here. Okay, now we have lots of pandas on the wall. Maybe we'll add all these pandas on the table. Oops, sorry, I changed that by accident. And put it on all the horizontal surfaces. And there you have it. I hope you're all having as much fun as this red panda just dancing around. I hope that shows a little bit of the power of this template. Whoa. Sorry about that. I think what's happening here is that these pandas are a little big, but you know, we can change the scale here. But yeah, I hope you all had fun. I'm gonna go ahead and check on the comment one more time and see how you're all feeling. Awesome. I think we answered all the questions. Last chance if anyone has anything else. Other than that, I'm so happy that you all got to join us. Shout out to Amir and Artem. Thank you for helping me with the stream and answering some of the questions. They're all the most amazing people in the world. Hopefully one day we'll get them on the stream here. And I'll see you all in the forum. I'll see you all on Snapchat. I'll see you all on Lens Studio. I can't wait to see what you come up with this amazing template. So one more time, in case you need it, because this is where it'll all begin, go ahead and jump to lensstudio.com. Go ahead and click Learn More here and jump into our template. And if you miss any part of our video, you can rewind or read our guide here, and it will show you all you'll need to do to make this amazing experience. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it. I can't wait. See you on the next one. See you later. Bye-bye.